Well, we got one participant on their iPhone. Let me know who that is, please, and I'll mark you present. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, this is Victor.
Oh, hi, Victor. How are you?
Doing good.
Thanks for coming. We're waiting on the others. I think they'll be here in a few.
Okay, that's
All right. Well, Victor, we'll see if anybody else comes. I am a little puzzled at this because I would like to. I've heard from a couple that said I have other classes meeting at the same time. I chose the 8:00 p.m. time because I felt like it was, pretty unencumbered by other activities. Most people need to eat supper at some point, and you can even eat supper while attending this conference. So what do you think, Victor?
I don't know. I feel like how many people are supposed to be on the?
Well, we have 19 in the class. And I know you've been on a previous conference, so I appreciate that. And it's not like everybody's, but I just sent out a reminder. The dean is in support of this because for an online class, you need some kind of interaction is very helpful toward learning. So that's why I do it, and it's helpful to me. So, but I guess a lot of people will figure on. Now, I'm not going to include this particular part of the recording, but I'll make it available to the others so you can be candid. And but it is kind of amazing to me that out of 19, we just have the two of us. So because I do prepare for it, and so really, the dean said, "Why don't you have a system where people get credit for attending, and then if they don't attend, without letting you know that there's a really good excuse, there's a 5-point penalty." So, I'd rather have things in a positive realm instead of negative reinforcement, but sometimes negative reinforcement works better, I would suppose. But
yeah, I think so.
Okay, well, let's see. I had some notes about that we can go ahead and do that. If somebody else joins, they will definitely get good credit. What I usually do sometimes is to share the screen, and then we'll go look at some of the things in the PowerPoints that I'd like to highlight a little bit. And okay, there's Rebecca. Okay, thank you. Can you hear us? Sometimes it takes a little while. Okay, this is Rebecca Chance. Okay.
Says I'm in the meeting now, Bubba.
Okay, so we had somebody else join.
Yeah, I can hear it.
Okay. Is that Becca?
Hello.
Yes. All right.
This is Dora Kathy. My computer wasn't letting me work, so I just thought I'd call.
Oh, that is just fine. The computer, was it not, when you clicked on that link,
It just said there was a security error.
Okay. Now, it could be something like an antivirus thing, but I'm glad you called and all that stuff. We'll definitely be counted with us, and we'll record anybody else who comes. So, and
okay.
So Victor's here, and we were just talking, and if I think it's encouraging. I hope others aren't having technical problems. We've been doing this for over a year, and I really haven't run into people having very many technical problems. So that's why I kind of chose the 8:00 p.m. Time frame, because I thought, well, everybody's going to eat supper sometime, and that most practices for athletic teams should be over by about that time, and things like that. So if you all have any hints on how to get better participation, the Dean Mason said, you need to penalize them, and I've got all of that set up. So if I don't hear from them, by that time, by the time of the scheduled thing, then it's will give me a little penalty. So thank you all. And basically, I always try to make these last 30 minutes or less. Most of them are less than 30. So I thought we might go into the slides just a little bit. And I have a way to share the screen here, which I can do. When we look at this, this is some slides from chapter 14. I just wanted to give you all a little glimpse at this, 14 is about distribution channels and things like that. So to understand the difference between these different types of distribution, why you go into a store in Abilene or Dallas and certain things are available and certain things are not available. We don't carry that here. We can't carry that here. Things like that you hear sometimes. Now, my example of intensive distribution, which is available everywhere, near through all available channels, is like milk. It's so universal. I guess some of us stopped drinking milk, after childhood and adolescence and all that, but you can go into any convenience store and find milk. And then the next one is like a selective distribution. And my example there is, if you've seen Fossil watches, they are very fashion forward and very successful brand. You find those at places like Dillard's, but you don't find them typically at places like Target or Walmart. So that's part of why they want to, and part of that is that they like to be able to tell Dillard's, we're not going to go sell, you're not going to go find Fossil watches that you're carrying at Dillard's for less money at Walmart. You're just not, that's not going to be the way we work with you. We value the relationship. So you can imagine the conversation there. That is a selective distribution. Then you get into really exclusive distribution, and that was like in the Lexus brand, which, as you know, is a offshoot of the Toyota. We don't have a Lexus dealership in Abilene because we really, our geographic area doesn't have enough population. So you would have to go to Lubbock or Fort Worth before you find a Lexus dealership. And they try to cover our area by saying, well, there are a certain number of people in the area that can afford a Lexus, and we will, driving around Abilene, you do see quite a few Lexuses. So, but they have to, those people buy those in other places. So, okay, we have Ethan coming on here, so I just want to make sure I get everybody down who's here. Okay, yeah. All right, and welcome. And I think we got somebody else on a phone, and that is the phone 7573. Who is that?
Zakai Love.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I want to make sure you get credit for being here. I think we have everybody else. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, everybody's listed here. So thank you for being here. All right, we're talking about distribution and how that works there. Wanted to talk a little bit about in a couple of other. I'm going to go through. We don't have time because I try to keep it short. All these slides, but there is. I will stop on some that I want to highlight a little bit. So I wanted to talk a little bit about channel conflict a little bit. And can anybody define what channel conflict is in your view? Anybody want to take a crack at that? There is it can be in two formats. Horizontal conflict. That's just let's say you're a retailer and then there's a retailer down the street. You're both carrying the same, say, Fossil watches, and you don't think that the other is being fair in what they're doing. I'm gonna mute some of the phone people just because it's a little bit better. So if you want to say something, you can unmute yourself, and that's just fine with me. So, but there's also vertical conflict, and I had an example of vertical conflict there. And does anybody remember Dublin Dr. Pepper? You can say yes or put it in the chat or something like that. Dublin, Texas, down the road here, was the last holdout in terms of using real cane sugar in their formulation of Dr. Pepper, because the way soft drinks are distributed is that they have a whole network of local bottlers, and the bottler has had a lot of autonomy in the past. So if they didn't want to switch over to high fructose corn syrup, which is in the news a lot, they didn't have to. But the problem was with the Dublin bottling company was, kind of creeping out, and they were selling that Dublin Dr. Pepper in Abilene. They were selling it maybe in Fort Worth. Well, Dr. Pepper's legal department did not like that because they have agreements with all these geographically drawn areas. So that is my favorite example of channel conflict because it's vertical. The big Papa company is saying, no, you can't do that. It's fine to use sugar, but you can't be selling outside of your territory. So you see that a lot. A lot of types of disagreements happen that way. So I wanted to talk about that. So another area is these are nice fashion watches, but you have the gray market. You might look at these watches, but you might visit some city, and all of a sudden you see these great, a brand that you've seen before, and it's highly advertised, and it seems like a really high quality watch, but it only costs $50 instead of $500. And you're wondering why. A lot of times that's because of the market. I mean, the gray market there. But cars can be done that way as well. So it's a problem. And the government is involved in that because of a number of things, including copyright infringement and things like that. So, and the best thing to how do you get everybody to agree? Well, it takes some leadership, really. There's a mention of what a channel captain is in the books, in the textbook there. They used example of Kroger. HEB is very large in Texas, so they might be a channel captain and kind of say, well, we know, we don't want our competitors to go out of business. We just want to do well against them. So, all right. We are still sharing the screen here, but I wanted to give somebody a chance to answer. I asked the question about the channel conflict. Can anybody think of another example of channel conflict? Okay. Let's go to that third one, which is what is the difference between a specialty store and a department store? We talked a lot in retailing. We'll switch over here to the retailing area. Anybody want to explain that?
A specialty store like Cabela's and a department store like Bell's or Dillard's.
I think that's a great example. Dillard's is a department store. Now, when you get over to Abilene, you've got, my definition is a lot of times a department store contains things like furniture. They might sell appliances. Sears is a department store. And then you kind of got, carriage trade department stores versus lower end department stores. But Dillard's probably qualifies as a department store, and Bell's as well. Kohl's, I would probably say. They're not super high service places. Nordstrom's is a department store. Well, you could say a specialty store. Neiman Marcus is considered a specialty store because they don't really try to suit everybody. That's one of the things there. So thank you for answering that question for us. And let's look at a couple of. I wanted to highlight a little bit. We got the wheel of retailing is something interesting. I think there are so many jobs in retailing that Well, I grew up in retailing, so you'll figure out that's a favorite of mine to talk about. But retailing is going through this incredible change right now, and in your lifetimes, it's going to be changing even more. Amazon, of course, is mentioned all the time, but there are glimmers of hope for smaller retailers and young, savvy, retailers who work on the web primarily. So if you have an idea, I would say don't discount it. H&M was a Swedish retailer that had success in Europe, and they opened stores in New York, and all of a sudden everybody's talking about them. They do things a little bit differently. They put their merchandise out. It's very fashion oriented, and they put it out so early. They might have, instead of spring set of merchandise and a summer set of merchandise, they might have 3 different spring sets and then 3 or 4 summer sets. So just giving a lot more selection that way, move it in, move it out, and doing it all at a price. In terms of history, this is, you had the general stores at first. Early Abilene stuff was like that. Supermarkets, you had these supermarkets like H-E-B. We used to have one in the Abilene out of Brownwood. It was called JRB. And they were all kind of copying each other. But it was the first time that you had people kind of putting systems in place, because it used to be, you knew the grocer. He had a butcher shop and a grocery. It all came from one small store, and they would get the stuff for you and maybe even deliver it to your house. Ironic that that these stores are going back to delivery now. Probably wouldn't have happened had it not been for Amazon. But discount stores in the 50s, convenience stores in the 60s, if you wanted to look at things like that, off-price retailers, here's a typical general type store, early apparel store of some kind. You had department stores like these that are shown at the bottom of the slide there, which more fashion merchandising. And I put this picture in here because there is a ribbon cutting going on, and there is a gentleman over there in a suit right there. He's getting ready to cut the ribbon, and this is the first Gibson's discount store center in Abilene. It's over there where Pam's Pets is, and I think there's a plasma place. Anyway, it's on North First near Willis, and it was a very large, probably 100,000 square foot building. The thing is, this was about 1961 or 2. George was my dad's cousin, George Minner, and he was involved in our store, which was here in Abilene, and Gibson's opened. So he was mayor, so it fell to him to cut the ribbon of the first Gibson's discount store, but he didn't know whether that was going to be a big threat to our store or not. It had to kind of play itself out in the marketplace. Kind of, if you want to think about, the 5 forces analysis, it's kind of like that. So thought that might be interesting. And then I'm going to go all the way over here to, let's see. So, slide 8 through 12, I wanted to highlight a little bit. This is the components of the retail strategy, because if you if you like marketing but aren't sure, sometimes it's a great idea to work for a retailer because you get to see all these different things. Merchandising is the purchasing and doing the making sure that you have the right mix of stuff to sell people. Promotion involves advertising. There's lots of jobs in this area. Atmospherics is there's a whole science of that. I used to have a illustration that we played for our class, but it became not available anymore. But it would show how you go. Most stores, most people go to the right. I don't know whether it has to do with being right-handed or not, but when they enter the front door of the store, they go to the right. So in your pricing and then customer service as well. So here in Abilene, we have, there was an Old Navy in the Mall of Abilene first, but they were kind of early in saying we need to be in a standalone kind of a big box type store. So they did that, and the strategy there. So shelf space, somebody said, and I think we have a Gaga Sure Better video somewhere in there. That the grocery stores are involved in, they're selling products to you, but they're also selling shelf space to people who make the products. So that is something that is we don't think about very often, particularly if you have one. You think you've invented the best product ever, and it's but they look to you. Basically the equation is they're going to say, you are new to us. We could make a lot of money if we just put more Procter & Gamble products in the shelf space that you are going to require. So you're going to have to pay us, to make sure that we can be profitable on that shelf space. And one thing a retailer does is they do a lot of analysis to make sure that everything in their store is making money for them. So just before we leave retailing for a second, a markup and markdown. Just be sure you understand these things for the tests. And in retailing, it's a little bit different. If we talk about a 100% markup, that's what the layman might say. But a retailer would say a 50% markup. If you're talking about doubling the price of a dress before it goes on retail sale, say from the dress factory, it costs $150. In the store, it's going to cost $300. That's a typical, in fact, they even call it a keystone markup. But retailers refer to that as a 50% markup because the markup portion of the final price is what we're talking about. It's a 50% markup. So that is something, if you don't want to appear dumb when you're talking to anybody in retailing, just be aware of that. All right, let's look. Got a lot in there about locations and things like that. There are reasons that we have certain things and not others. Atmospherics. Okay, let's. Here is independent retailers. I use the one downtown, which is Casa Authentique. In a former furniture store, they have ladies' clothing, they have furniture and accessories as well. So it's fairly close to a department store. So as well. So then you got the convenience. And there's Cabela's, and thanks for mentioning that. So Toys R Us, they just announced last week they're going to close all their stores. So there's probably another big effect of both Walmart and Amazon. I wanted to go over just, I think, nearly to the end of the slide deck, and because it's getting close to the end of our time here, but to talk a little bit about direct response and direct mail. We have let's see, J. Crew was my example. Instead of examining how much money is coming in for every foot of shelf space, they're saying how much money is coming in from every square inch of our catalog, and they do that. LL Bean's making some changes, like it says there. Everything used to be shipped free, even till last year, but they just said because people are getting a little too, a little too lax about kind of saying, well, Bean's gonna, I'll just, they were losing money on that aspect of it because too many people were returning things. So they're not going to make you, buy over $50, which is fairly common these days. There's your square inch analysis and your kind of the way things go on how you plan a catalog. Printing, obviously a lot is still very good. It's now pretty integrated into the web process. All these brands here, I'm going to go on through there, skipping over. I wanted you all to know about telemarketing. It would seem like only crazy people would do telemarketing these days because nobody likes to get junk phone calls, right? But here is an equation that kind of works for them. You start with 1,000 prospects. They're cheap to make. You say you get 36 sales appointments. Out of 1,000, that's not a very good hit rate, but you might get 26 long-term sales opportunities by just getting information from them, or you might get their email address. So for follow-up marketing campaigns. So you never know where the interest is going to really come in. So this is kind of why we continue to see things like that. So, okay. I was going to show you a little bit. This is the store I grew up in. It still exists in downtown Abilene as Under One Roof, which is kind of a mall type thing where they have booths and stuff. But that's the way it looked back in probably about 1926. We had promotions. This one, we received some co-op advertising money from DuPont Corporation, which made a substance that went into fabrics. So Arnell was a type of, I guess, nylon that, was back in the 60s, people were there, but we had a pretty robust display department and things like that. While I was talking about that, I wanted to point out this is still a very good way of merchandising is the window displays. Probably in New York or London. The Christmas displays are still of note in many cities and are pretty spectacular. So, and we had, this was a Masterpiece Theater thing, so I won't go into that right now, but okay. I think I don't want to go on any longer because I think we're really about done. We have, the 5 of us have already noted that y'all are here, and I appreciate it. Does anybody have any questions at this point?
Nope.
All right. We'll look at, let's see here. Going back to, sometimes I have trouble getting it back on there, but nope, I have to admit it's all still an experiment, but I appreciate you all being here, and we will not have another video chat for another 2 weeks. So we're going to have 2 more at the end of the semester, from now to the end of the semester. This semester is going to be, we are going to finish, and you may have about a week at the end of the semester that I'm going to kind of give you back because we've been going, as you know, at a pretty rapid pace, but because of travel schedules, and I'll be teaching another course coming up, I wanted to go ahead and finish up before we get very close to May. And I know that you're going to be studying for other finals around that time, so I'm going to give that time back to you. So if anybody has any comments or anything like that, I'd love to hear them. And but keep going. And those of you who are here, I appreciate it. And everybody have a good evening. I'll just go ahead and close the meeting. Okay, thanks everybody.